All right, today we're diving into something pretty intense. We're talking about one of the most severe pain conditions known to medicine. It's a group of disorders so bad, they've picked up a truly terrifying nickname along the way. Yeah, they're called suicide headaches. Now, obviously, that's not an official medical term, but it's a name that comes straight from the sheer desperation of the people who experience them. It just goes to show you we're talking about a level of pain that's almost impossible to imagine. So, okay, let's get into what's actually happening here. Okay, so the official name for this whole group of disorders is Trigeminal Autonomic Cephalgias. I know, it's a total mouthful. We just call them TACs, TACs for short. But that long name is actually super descriptive if you break it down. Trigeminal, that's for the trigeminal nerve, a major pain pathway in your face. Autonomic, that points to all those symptoms you can't control, like your eye tearing up or your nose getting stuffy. And cephalgia, well, that's just the fancy medical word for headache. So really, the best way to think about it is like a family of headaches that are all related, but each one is a little different. So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with the features that tie this whole TAC family together. Then we'll put a spotlight on the most infamous one, the cluster headache. After that, we'll see how it stacks up against its relatives, look at a different kind of pain that often gets mixed up with these, and then, and this is the most important part, we'll see why telling them all apart is so critical. All right, first things first. What's the unmistakable signature of a TAC? What makes them a distinct family of headaches? So here are the core features, the things they all have in common. First, the pain is always on just one side of the head. We call that unilateral. And we're not talking about a dull ache here. This is a severe, stabbing, almost boring kind of pain that comes in these intense attacks. But here's the real kicker, the thing that's a dead giveaway. It's these autonomic symptoms down here. They only happen on the exact same side as the pain. So can you imagine that? Pain so bad that your eye starts tearing up, your nose gets all stuffy, but only on that one side of your face? That is the TAC signature. Okay, so to really get a handle on this family, we've got to start with its most famous, or maybe infamous, and feared member, the cluster headache. This is kind of the main one, the archetype that all the others get compared to. The classic profile for a cluster headache is actually pretty specific. It tends to hit younger men more often. And a really key sign is what the person does during an attack. They get extremely restless. It's the complete opposite of a migraine, right? With a migraine, you just want to lie still in a dark, quiet room. But with a cluster headache, people feel driven to pace around, to rock back and forth. Some even bang their heads against a wall just for a different sensation. It's that bad. Another thing, alcohol is a huge trigger, and the attacks are notorious for striking at night, literally waking you up from a dead sleep. And these attacks, they're just relentless. This isn't a one headache and done for the day kind of thing. No way. A person can get hit with anywhere from 1 to 8 of these brutal episodes in just a single day. And each one of those attacks, it can last anywhere from 15 minutes all the way up to 3 hours. Now, I know 15 minutes might not sound that long, but when you are dealing with this kind of pain, believe me, it is an absolute eternity. And then it can just happen all over again a few hours later. All right, so that's the big one, the cluster headache. But like we said, it's part of a family. It has relatives. And the subtle differences between them, well, they mean everything when it's time to find a treatment that actually works. Okay, first up is a relative called paroxysmal hemicrania. And just look at the comparison here. The attacks themselves are a lot shorter, right? Only 2 to 30 minutes. But, and this is a big but, they are way more frequent. We're talking up to 20 times a day. And here's another huge clue for doctors. Unlike a cluster headache, alcohol doesn't trigger it. And that brings us to what is pretty much the magic bullet for diagnosing this thing. It turns out paroxysmal hemicrania has this dramatic, almost magical response to a specific anti-inflammatory drug called indomethacin. I mean, if a patient takes it and gets complete relief, that's basically the diagnosis right there. It's like having a key that only fits one single lock. Okay, next up, let's look at another one called SUNCT. And the differences here, they're even more wild. The attacks are unbelievably short. We're talking just seconds. But look at the trigger. It can be something as simple as touching the skin. Just imagine that for a second. Not being able to wash your face or shave or even just have a breeze hit your cheek without setting off an attack. It's brutal. Plus, there's no refractory period, which means the attacks can just fire off one after another back to back with zero break. All right, so think of this slide as our master cheat sheet. It lays out the whole family side by side. You can see we've added hemicrania continua, which is basically a constant one-sided headache that, guess what, also responds to that drug indomethacin. But look across the rows. You can see clear differences in how long the attacks last, how often they happen, who they tend to affect. But the really, really crucial takeaway here is that bottom row. Look at that. Each one of these conditions has its own specific treatment that works best.
Okay, so we've walked through the TAC family, but there's another really severe facial pain condition that gets confused with them all the time, even though it's a completely different beast. And that's trigeminal neuralgia.
You might have heard its historical name, tic douloureux. It's French, and it literally means painful twitch. And honestly, it's the perfect description. The pain is so sudden, so shocking, it makes you physically wince or have a facial spasm you can't control.
And this is where we see the most crucial difference, the actual quality of the pain. Remember, TAC pain is this deep, boring, stabbing pain that lasts for minutes or hours, and it brings all those side effects with it. The tearing eye, the stuffy nose. Trigeminal neuralgia, totally different. It's a sharp, stabbing, electric shock kind of pain that lasts for maybe a few seconds. And, this is critical, there are none of those autonomic symptoms. No tearing eye, no runny nose, just pure electric pain.
And a lot of the time, the cause is actually mechanical. In most cases where it's just on one side, what's happening is a blood vessel is literally pressing on the trigeminal nerve, irritating it. Now, if the pain shows up on both sides of the face, that's a huge red flag for doctors. It could be a sign of the demyelinating condition, something like multiple sclerosis, and that means a whole different set of tests are needed.
Okay, so we've spent all this time drawing these really fine lines between these different conditions. Now we get to the most important part of this whole explainer. Why does any of this actually matter?
I mean, really, why bother? Why get so granular about whether an attack lasts for seconds or for minutes, or whether the pain feels like a drill versus an electric shock? Well, the answer is everything. It's right here on this slide. Because getting the diagnosis right is the only way to get the treatment right. For a cluster headache, an attack can be stopped in its tracks with high-flow oxygen. For paroxysmal hemicrania, you need that magic bullet, indomethacin. And for trigeminal neuralgia, you're looking at completely different drugs like carbamazepine or sometimes even brain surgery. If you give the wrong treatment to the wrong condition, it does absolutely nothing. So that's the ultimate takeaway here. Getting a precise diagnosis isn't just some academic exercise for doctors to debate. For the person who is actually suffering, it is the direct path, and a lot of times the only path, to getting some relief from a level of pain that is just unimaginable. And, it kind of makes you wonder, right? By studying these rare, incredibly extreme conditions, could we actually unlock some of the fundamental secrets of how pain works in the human brain, period? And if we could do that, could it lead to better treatments for everyone, for all kinds of pain? It's a pretty powerful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us.